You know, you can win as many Super Rugby titles as you can, and it's never going to compare to being the coach of the New Zealand All Blacks. You're effectively the CFO of the New Zealand All Black brand, the biggest brand in world rugby, the most iconic brand in world rugby, and a brand that's got hundreds of millions of dollars invested in it. So you are the man that's responsible for the results of that particular brand when your team runs out onto the field every time. And that's something you are never going to experience as a Super Rugby coach, no matter how successful you are. So I think that's something else that Razor's coming to grips with as well, the pressure associated with that financial machine behind the New Zealand All Blacks. Well, as rugby fans, we can all start to get really excited now about that clash at Eden Park. We're going to be hyping up another game at Eden Park this year. This time it's against our foe, the Wallabies. And of course, there's lots of opinions out there, and I've been reading a lot of comments on different platforms about what's going to happen in Auckland. But before we get there, I thought it might be interesting to have a look at a little bit on reflection. What's gone on so far? Where are the trends that are starting to occur? And see whether or not you and I can start to make some more educated predictions on what's going to happen as a bunch of rugby fans who love the game. And I'm smiling because that's all we are. We're rugby fans. We've got no idea what's going to happen, and probably some of the people that we're going to be talking about today have got no idea what's going to happen as well. But if we look at the All Blacks season this year so far compared to last year, well, we're 7 games in. They'd lost 2 games at this stage last year. They've lost 2 games so far this year, so we could say, well, we're on a parity with last year. And the ironic thing is, so far in, we've scored 198 points, the All Blacks, and they scored 198 points after their 7 games last year. So how's that for a little bit of trivia? But it's in points against them that makes a little bit of a difference. And the All Blacks last year at this time had 133 points scored against them. So far, after 7 games this year, they've had 166 points scored against them. Now, you might say, well, it was all those points that the South Africans scored in Wellington. Well, don't forget, last year, the Lost Pumas bet the All Blacks in Wellington by 38 points to 30. And the South Africans have scored 43 points in Wellington this year. So only 5 points difference when it comes to that particular matchup, Wellington on Wellington. And while we're talking about Wellington last year versus Wellington this year, I thought to myself, what's changed in this All Black team since last year when we lost to the Argentines in Wellington, and this year when we lost to the Springboks in Wellington? So I decided to have a look at the team that played against Argentina last year and then see what the evolution of the team looks like. So let's have a look at that together now, and we can discuss it and give us our thoughts. Not forgetting, of course, that the All Blacks lost both of these games, so maybe it's not too good to look at these 2 teams. But the reason I wanted to do this was just to see where Razor's selections are starting to trend, and what we've seen in terms of the evolution of the team since last year's loss in Wellington. So let's have a look at the team that played in Wellington last year against the Pumas. First of all, just to rack your memory back to that horrible loss against the Pumas. And at fullback we had Beauden Barrett. On the wings we had Sevu Reece and Mark Talia. So there we go, those 2 guys are gone. We're not seeing them anymore. In the centres we had Anton Lienert-Brown along with Geordie Barrett. So Anton Lienert-Brown's not on the scene anymore. And then in number 10 we had Damien McKenzie starting off for the All Blacks. Well, that didn't happen this year either, did it? And then at halfback we had TJ Perenara, who's since retired from international rugby. So there we go, quite a lot of changes in the All Black backline from last year. And then the forwards were interesting last year. We had Ardie Savea at 8, and he was the captain of the team against the Pumas last year in Wellington. And then the 2 loosies were Dalton Papali'i and Ethan Blackadder. Well, those 2 guys are not part of the mix in the All Black team anymore this year. Sam Dowry and Tupou Vai were the locks in that game, and the front row was Tyrell Lomax, Cody Taylor and Ethan de Groot. So 12 months is a long time in rugby, with a lot of those players not featuring in this year's All Black team. And then off the bench last year we saw Amua, Tuangafasi and Newell as the front row that came on, and we saw Josh Lord and Wallace Satiti coming off the bench last year. And the back reserves were Ratama, Ioane and Jordan. Will Jordan not even starting that game against the Pumas last year in Wellington. And of course this year, well, let's have a look at the difference. At fullback this year we had Damian McKenzie starting at 15. We had Jordan and Leroy Carter on the wings. The midfield were Billy Proctor and Geordie Barrett. Bowden Barrett was starting at 10 rather than 15 like he did last year. And we had Noah Hotham starting the game this year. But of course Finlay Christie came on after 9 minutes and played most of the game at halfback. This year we had Wallace Satiti at number 8. We had Adi Savia and Simon Parker as the loose forwards. Scott Barrett and Tupou Vai as the locks. And Scott Barrett, of course, was the captain. And then the front row this year was Lomax, Takiaho and Ethan de Groot. And basically in the absence of Cody Taylor there. And then off the bench we had McAllister, Williams and Newell in the front row. Fabian Holland, Duplessis Karefi. And the backs, as I said, Christie came on. We had Quinn Tupaia and Ruben Love. So there's the evolution of the All Black team that we've seen in the last 12 months. But is this the best All Black team? And is this the team that we're likely to see against the Wallabies in Auckland on the 27th of September? Well, I hope not, with a big question mark around that. So what I've done is I've taken a good look at the 7 games the All Blacks have played this year, and I've thought about what we need to really do to try and improve mainly our backline, because for me there's been a lot of issues in the backline this year. I think this group of forwards, we can find the right combinations and things can get back on track. I'm not going to read too much into it just to that game against the Springboks in Wellington. So what I've done is I've put together now my team that I would like to see Razor go with, and I'd like to see Razor stick with this as we build up to the Rugby World Cup and give this team a lot of chance to get a lot of game time, so we can basically get some combinations going both on attack and defence. So here's my team as I see it today. I'd like to see Geordie Barrett at fullback. I've made no secrets about that. I think he brings a lot to that position. He's great at with his big kick to clear us out of our red zone when we're in trouble, so our exits can be a lot more effective. He's brilliant in his last line defence. Just go and check out the try scoring tackle he put on Cheslin Colby in that game in Wellington. And I'd rather have a big guy like Geordie Barrett at 15 than one of the smaller guys, Will Jordan and Damian McKenzie, that we've been seeing recently. And then on the wings I would have Caleb Clark and Will Jordan. I'd bring Clark back into the 11. I think he can grow back into that level of play that we've been seeing from him in the past. And as I keep saying, Will Jordan for me is more of a try scoring machine when he's on the wing for the All Blacks. For me, we've been struggling with the midfield, so it's time to change things up and put a bit of penetration in there as far as the All Blacks talent and skills are going. So I'm going to go with Lester Fainganuku at 13 and Leroy Carter coming into 12. I think he could cause a lot of damage there. Kind of a Len Ikitau sort of player, Leroy Carter, and his speed would be really dynamic from the number 12. So have a think about that and see whether you'd agree with it. And then at 10, Ruben Love needs to be in there for me, and Cam Roigard at number 9. Those two would bring a fantastic combination, keeping the defences guessing. Roigard with his great sniping runs from the base of the scrums and the rucks and the maul, and then confusing the defensive line, because with Ruben Love having the ability also to be very good off both feet and also with a strategic kicking game, I think that 9 and 10 combination would work extremely well for the All Blacks. And then looking at my forward pack, I would be going with Simon Parker at 8, Adi Savia as the captain and 7, Tupou Vai back to number 6, and then the lock, Scott Barrett, Fabian Holland starting the game. And then the front row, Ethan de Groot, Cody Taylor and Fletcher Newell. I think Fletcher Newell's playing good enough rugby at the moment to be starting games, and I would be bringing Tyrell Lomax off the bench. So there we go. That's my All Black 15 that I would be starting at the moment. I think these guys would give us something that we're not seeing, particularly from the back line at the moment. And I think moving Geordie Barrett to the 15 jersey would actually be the catalyst of a lot of positive change in this backline. Anyway, let me know what you think of that particular team. But I've put this together after looking at last year's performances and so far this year. So it's not just based on the game against South Africa and Wellington. This is looking at the All Blacks evolution as a team. And I haven't seen enough evolution in this team that's actually been clicking. That's been the key here. I think we're seeing the same old, as the scores suggest. Last year, after 7 games, we scored 198 points. After 7 games this year, we scored 198 points. So there's not too much difference at all in terms of our attacking prowess and our evolution going forward against the team teams that we're playing in the Rugby Championship. So that would be my next move for the All Blacks. But what's Razor likely to do in Auckland at Eden Park? Well, I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think he's going to give this team just pretty much like he did against the when they lost against Argentina and came back to Eden Park. He's going to give them another opportunity to prove themselves at Eden Park once again. So it's going to be more or less the same team doing the same thing again, going to Eden Park to try and get the retribution that they're looking for against the Australian Wallabies. Now, one of the things that might actually help Razor at Eden Park against the Wallabies is the Wallabies' depletion of their team. And I feel so sorry for Joe Schmidt, because this season he's really gone through the ringer when it comes to his team selections and those players that are available, hasn't he? He's had over 14 injury to key players in the Wallabies this season, and then on top of that he's got players that have to go back to Europe contractually to play for their European clubs. And then you've got another one like Nick White, who's actually going into retirement again. So it's a constant change and battle for Joe Schmidt to keep his best team on the field. But what a job the Wallabies have been doing with this disruption to their selection process. So I don't care who's going to turn up for the Wallabies at Eden Park this year. They're going to be on it, and they're going to be giving the All Blacks a hard time. But I do think this plays into Razor's favour a little bit with all these disruptions that are going on to the Wallabies and some of their selections that they're going to be forced to make for that particular game. So watch out for that as being a real key component on the result at Eden Park. So yeah, my gut feel is that Razor's going to give pretty much the same team the opportunity to go out to Eden Park and redeem themselves in front of the All Black fans and to try and get a solid win on the board. Everyone's talking about the All Blacks coming back with a vengeance, but let's remember, no team has won 2 games in a row so far in this year's Rugby Championship. And also, no team's lost 2 games in a row, and that's going to happen for the first time in this year's Rugby Championship unless it's a draw at Eden Park next weekend. So that's going to be another really interesting dilemma to the Rugby Championship this year. One of these 2 teams is perhaps going to lose for the 2nd time in a row. Now, there was a lot of comments going around as well about Ian Foster, and some people saying we should never have got rid of Fozzie. So I thought, hey, what was Fozzie's percentage winning record after 20 games in charge of the All Blacks? Well, it happens to be 80%. So then I looked up Razor's, and Razor's is 70%. So yeah, Ian Foster, after 20 games of his tenure with the All Blacks as head coach, he's ahead of Razor at this particular stage. But there's a long way to go, of course, to see what's going to happen. Now, as I said, some of you think that Razor should be fired if the All Blacks lose the Bledisloe Cup game in Auckland on the 27th of September. But let's remember, last year Razor lost 4 games in his first season in charge of the New Zealand All Blacks. He's lost 2 games so far this year. So some of those All Blacks supporters perhaps are not giving Razor the same length of rope that he had last year when it came to win and losses throughout the season. Let me know in the comments what you think about Razor's performance so far, and whether or not you think he should go and be fired after the game at Eden Park if the All Blacks happen to lose that particular game. Now, as I said, don't underestimate the amount of pressure on Razor to get results for the All Blacks brand because of the financial investment that's gone into this team and what investors are looking for in return. If the All Blacks keep losing, it's meaning that that investment opportunity is going to get a lot of pressure put on it. And this is the sort of thing that New Zealand rugby cannot stand at this particular time. We have a lot of pressure from rugby league in the country and a lot of other sports that are taking away the next generation of All Black players and coercing them to come over to play their particular sport. So the All Blacks need to keep winning. They need to keep that return on investment, and Razor will be feeling that pressure, there's no doubt about it. So there's some of my thoughts around Razor's next move and where we've come from over the last 12 months, what we're looking forward to at Eden Park next weekend. And there's a lot of things that are going to go on between now and then, and I'm going to bring you a lot more content right here on Inside Rugby with Mark from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. So make sure you stay tuned. A lot of you who watch my channel on a regular basis have not yet hit the subscribe button, so please do that. If you've enjoyed the content today, give it a thumbs up, share it with your rugby mates all around the world. That's how I'm going to continue to make this channel grow across the world of rugby. It's great having you all here, and thank you to everybody that's joining in on the live chats. We're having a lot of fun there as well. Okay, I'll be back again soon with some more content. Until then, you keep safe, keep well, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and I'll see you again from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Until then, it's time to say adios from me. Bye for now.